want to get your thoughts real quick before we jump into the Cowboys. Obviously, a very emotional last 24 hours, near 24 hours now, when it comes to Damar Hamlin and the cardiac arrest that he suffered in Monday Night Football last night. Your thoughts on how all of this has played out, the reaction, and how you have kind of dealt with some of this, knowing how closely you cover the league in this way.
Well, I've found it interesting because, you know, the NFL is such a, you know, it's such a huge product. And especially with social media, you know, it's easy to see, you know, there's always going to be people that are critical of everything that, you know, a team does, NFL does, whatever. But I think all in all, I thought the league handled it pretty well. I know there was the talk of they're going to give the teams 5 minutes to get back on the field. And whether that did happen or didn't, the fact that they didn't get back out on the field was the right decision. And to be honest with you, it reminded me of a game that I was at in '97. It was Lions and Jets. It was at the end of the season, and both teams had to win to get into the playoffs. And it was a huge game in Detroit because, frankly, they just didn't make the playoffs a ton. And when they did, they just didn't have great teams. But also Barry Sanders was going to go for 2,000 yards, and that's the loudest I've ever heard a stadium in the Pontiac Silverdome. And in the fourth quarter, linebacker Reggie Brown suffered a neck injury. And again, 97, no social media, nobody knows what's going on. And you see the guy down, and all of a sudden it's like players are like motioning to the sideline, and you're just like, I wonder what's going on here. You know, like how come he isn't moving? Next thing you know, there's Lions players running to the ambulance in the end zone and grabbing the stretcher and running like 20, 30 yards on the field, pushing the stretcher, like running it over there to him. And there was a member from the Lions medical staff giving him CPR. So they got him on into the ambulance, and they take him away. Now, keep in mind, this is a huge game, and the place is rocking, and it just goes completely dead silent. And there's good 10, 11 minutes left in the game, and after they put him into the back of the ambulance and he went to the hospital, from what I remember, we didn't know if he was conscious or not or anything, and they went back to playing that game. I mean, they played the rest of that game. Barry went over 2,000 yards. Like, you just didn't know any of the stuff that you know today because of social media and how quickly you know it. But there was serious panic in that stadium because, again, I will never forget seeing players run 20, 30 yards to go grab the stretcher from the ambulance in the end zone and run it out on the field. You're just like, this doesn't make sense, you know. And that's the big thing about last night, that you didn't have to see exactly what the doctors were doing. You could just see the look and the way the other player, anytime a player starts quickly motioning the sideline, you know it's not good, whatever it is. And so I think all in all, I think that everything was handled about as well as you can hope for.
Yeah, I don't know how to. I've been handed the tough duty of trying to transition that into talking about the Cowboys, and I really don't know how to. But I'll do my best here, as obviously the Cowboys are now in this situation where they're in a wild situation where a very slight chance of winning the division and an even slighter chance of getting the #1 seed for this team. First of all, I guess like a very generic question. Do you think that the 1 seed is actually something that could happen for this team?
I do, but I mean, I think it's a very small chance. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, just look at the Vegas odds on this. I do think the Cowboys have a good chance of beating Washington. That's not a huge surprise, but that line's like 5.5. And then for them to get the 1 seed, they need the Eagles to lose. The Eagles are favored by 14. Then they would also need San Francisco to lose. San Francisco is favored by 14 over Arizona. So it's not likely. But with that possibility still being out there, I just think you got to do everything you can to try and win that game, because you just never know like how crazy this game is. I didn't think they would even be in the position in week 18 to even have a chance to get that seed. And the other part of it for me too is just, this is the best the Cowboys have played at home since I've covered the team. I mean, they've won their last 8 home games. The chance to even if you didn't get the 1 seed, to just even host a playoff game, I think is huge. And just the percentage chances that would increase of you moving on in the playoffs if you got a chance to host a game. I know that Cowboys fans don't want to hear that after they were the only wild card team to lose last year at home, but still, I think you do everything you possibly can to get a home game. I do think it's unlikely. I do expect to be going to Tampa in a couple of weeks, but there is a small chance, and as long as that chance is there, you got to do everything you can to try and get it.
Okay, so you brought up, obviously, the idea of whether or not this team could be a 1, a 2, or a 5 seed. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I'm interested in your thought on this because, obviously, thinking about the Packers game from earlier on this season and now where the Packers could be walking into AT&T Stadium for Wild Card Weekend, would you rather this team be on the road against an inferior Tampa Bay team or an Aaron Rodgers team that seems like they're playing and clicking on the right at the right cylinder at the right time if they make the playoffs on Sunday?
It's a good question because obviously Cowboys fans have been traumatized by Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, so you don't really have a great pick with either one. Let's be honest, playoff games, it's unlikely it's going to be a blowout, and you don't want to be playing close games against Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. I don't care if you have the better team or not. So because of that, I think both of them can certainly beat you, but I would want to be playing at home. So whatever scenario gets me playing at home, if that's, hosting the Packers, you have to take that. Just the chances of you winning and advancing just increase significantly if you're playing at home. And believe me, if you've got to go on the road, playing at Tampa Bay is about as favorable as you can get. Obviously, Tom Brady aside, but there will be plenty of Cowboys fans at that game. It should be decent weather. You're more favorable to win there than to win in Philadelphia. Let's put it that way, or at Green Bay. And the Cowboys do have the better team than Tampa Bay. I understand it didn't look that way in Week 1, but they do, and so. And I do expect the Cowboys to be a very motivated team to try and finally get that first win over Tom Brady. So I think the Cowboys are the better team in either situation, but whatever would give you the chance to play at home, you got to take that.
So, John, as we head towards the playoffs for this Cowboys team, like the last month or, the last 4 games for this Cowboys team has seen them not be particularly good sacking the quarterback, and rushing the passer outside of obviously the Titans game where they get a few sacks, but also that is against resting some of their starters type Titans team and also a beaten and battered Titans team. Are you what do you think about the idea that the pass rush is going to, come back to life for this Cowboys team? Is that something that you anticipate, or are you concerned like I am?
Oh, no, there's certainly reason for concern there. When you go from the level that they were on, what was it, their first 12 games averaging 4 sacks per game. I mean, that's what you expect, and you should expect. That's not an outlier. I mean, when you have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence alone, let alone Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong, I mean, you should be among the league's sack leaders. And so it hasn't been there the last few weeks, and that is concerning. I do think they can get back to it, especially, let's say you get in the playoffs and you're playing a team like the Bucs and Tom Brady. You should be able to get pressure on Tom Brady. Their offensive line isn't great. He's certainly not mobile. You should be able to get some pressure on him, but he's also as great as there ever is, and probably ever will be at the quick game. And so he'll be getting the ball out quick, and that'll increase the plays that need to be made on the back end of your defense, which they haven't been making a ton, with the injuries to Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis. So one of those things has to step up. The only way that I see them continuing to play well or to overcome that in the playoffs to win games is for these takeaways to continue for them to have the takeaways in back-to-back years that they have is just, we haven't seen it since the 70s. So if they can keep that going, sure, then they can overcome a lot of this stuff. They can overcome them turning over the ball. If they're going to take the ball away 2-3 times in these playoff games, then they'll be just fine. But that to me seems like it's hard to really just kind of set your watch to no. You're going to get 2 or 3 takeaways, so just you'll be fine with that. Like there's going to be games where that's just not going to happen, especially the better teams you play against. So you're going to have to get home and you're going to have to get some sacks because let's be honest, when you get sacks, it usually is a drive ender. And so that's what they need. They need to be ending drives if they're not getting the takeaways and forcing punts, and there just hasn't been enough of that lately.
Jon Machota, The Athletic, covering the Dallas Cowboys, joining us on the Get Right with Reggie KG on 105 through the Fan via the Diamond Factory Hotline. So, John, for you, going into the final week of the season and into the playoffs, what's the one thing that concerns you the most and the one thing that gives you most confidence about this team's ability to make a playoff run?
The concern, I would say the biggest thing is probably, the number one thing is just get through this game healthy. You want to be one. I mean, you just see what these other teams in the league look at, what's going on with the Eagles, to not, or heck, just even the Cowboys on Thursday with Biotish, to just get through this game healthy. That to me is number one. It's pretty close on number 2, and that's stopping the run or on offense running the ball well. Those two things need to happen. We haven't seen it. That's been their detriment in a lot of these games that they've lost, is not being able to stop the run. And then lately, they just haven't run the ball as well. And so they're going to have to find a way to get that back in, because it looks like this team is going to have to be going on the road to make their playoff, if they're going to make a deep playoff run. And more than likely, that's going to include a trip to Philadelphia, and that could be some really bad weather. You're going to probably need to run the football to have some success there. As good as they've been in the passing game, if you tell me that this team is going to make it deep into the playoffs or to the Super Bowl, I find it hard to believe that that's going to happen without them running the ball better than they have. So getting back on track with the running game, obviously getting Tony Pollard back this week will be a big help, but it's more than that. They got to get some continuity on that offensive line, and then losing Biadasz, that obviously doesn't help it. And so if you can tell me they're going to get the run game back going, I think they'll be in pretty good shape. The other one I would say is that back end of the defense. That number 2 corner spot. I haven't seen enough to. And I don't know that they've seen enough to know, hey, you're in good shape with whether it's Nashawn Wright or Jerron Bland as that other outside corner. You're going to be facing some good quarterbacks first round with Tom Brady. He's going to find your weak link. If you have got a corner that's not playing well, he's going to find that. So, that would be a big concern as well.